Hi folks, caught me again having a slurp of coffee from my special mug. Thank you for joining me. Welcome back to the channel. Here at Peter Goes Rogue. And I am super rogue with this little mini-series about my Porsche and Porsche ownership, and it applies to a lot of other cars as well, not just Porsches particularly. Let's say sporty cars. I'm just trying to get my tracking back on. There we go. Right, so a few things to talk about today because the story has moved on a bit. I mustn't rock the table because if I do that, it affects the camera. Now, in my by now you'll have seen quite a lot of footage of me driving this car in a very sensible and also very spirited way, all within the law, of course. But you'll got a feel for what it's like, and the fact that I think some of the attraction will now be obvious beyond the. I didn't buy it because it was prestige, premium brand. A lot of people buy these for status reasons. If I was going to do that, I'd have bought it a long time ago, I suppose. It wasn't that turned me onto this car at all. It was literally the car, exactly like with I like the GT86 a lot. Became a bit dissatisfied with its lack of performance over time, but that's not been a problem here. And I saw this and I just thought it just looked right. Everything about its proportions, the shape, this thing I talked about where it does remind me of the E-Type Jaguar, especially at the back end quite a lot. Not so much at the front because it hasn't got a long bonnet, but the back end of it's so like an E-Type Jag to me, the proportions on the Cayman, on the 981 series anyway. And it all attracted me and it just looks brilliant. And something I mentioned, you may have seen my photo montage where I was in the Lake District with it, and you could see it next to I think it was a Skoda Kodiaq, I think it was. It just shows how tiny it is, And I have this problem when I go to when I've been going to the dealer for servicing in Chester. When I come out, they say, "It's all ready for you. Here, I paid the bill," and it's like, oof, squeaky bum time. And then I finally walk out needing smelling salts or fresh air, and I can't find it in the car park because everything, including the 911s, have got so big these days that unless they park it right out front, which they did 2 times ago, they parked it right out front, but the last time they didn't. And I was thinking, well, where is it? And it was hiding because it's so small, and it makes you realise how big cars have become. And this is a subject I want to talk about on another day, actually, about cars generally and size and weight of cars. That's all become very, very over the top. By the way, I've got a little money spider, would you believe? Actually, on my camera, just a little tiny money spider running off. He's running off now, we'll let him go. So, yeah, I think that'll have given you a flavour when you saw it. It looked like a model of a car next to a car sort of thing. It was incredible. And that's what it's like, When you park next to the Cayenne or the Macan or the Taycan, it looks half the size. It's a little, sporty little car. And the looks of the car are what attracted me, nothing else really. So I had to wrestle with the idea of owning a very upmarket brand, and the upsides and the downsides. Obviously a bit worried about security and things like that, but I didn't want to be seen to be someone who was just buying it to put it on the drive. And this is very much what I talked about in the very first episode when I revealed it. I never bought this to leave it on the drive to show off to people, because that's the exact opposite of the sort of character I am. I'm too far the other way, if anything. And people often say, well, why don't you leave it on your drive? It's a nice car to have, your neighbours will be impressed. And I think, that's the last thing. I'm not interested in what the neighbours like. No disrespect to any of my neighbours. Don't care about that. Don't care about what people think. Didn't buy it for any of that, for perceptional reasons or to impress anybody. I just bought it because I had a drive in it and that was it. Yeah, you drive one of those, you're going to want it, I'll tell you that now. So that was what I did, and this is why I've kept it kind of under wraps and why it doesn't sit out on the drive for any longer. The only time it does sit out on the drive is when it's really hot weather and it's just too hot, the car is hot, and I don't want to bring it in the house because it heats the house up. And on that subject, actually, before I forget, I'm just going to bring you over and let you see just behind me. I have got my new Shark fan. Well, my wife bought it rather than me in this case, actually. It's tiltable and everything. The Shark fan, which is really good, actually. You can it's a rechargeable fan, and basically, there we go. It has a slow start up. Well, it spools up. But it does get some proper waft. Now, why am I going on about shark fans, you might think? Okay, so that's the shark fan. The reason I'm showing you that is because it's something I wanted to talk about in this episode. It's blown dust around. Oh dear. I need to probably dust my garage a bit more. That is actually a factor, going back to this subject about I never park my car outside. Because, as I say, they get very hot, these Porsches, the sports cars, the 911 and the Cayman Boxster series. And because they're so tightly packaged, everything's so close, especially in this model. I mean, it's like Adrian Newey designed this car. Everything's so crammed in together, and this is why you get a lot of smell when it's been running hot from the headers, the exhaust, etc., and it heats the house up something rotten. And so we use that fan and many others. I've got these handheld ones, which I'll show you probably later. Handheld ones that we put and point them at the hot spots of the car and blow it out of the garage door, you know. And apart from that, once it's cooled down, the shutter comes down and it's never seen again, like a mystery Soviet fighter jet from the 1970s. So I've kept it pretty much under wraps, and this is why I didn't make a big song and dance and tell everybody 8 years ago. But one of the reasons I want to talk about it now, really, is about the way that the industry is changing, and it's, as I alluded to in I think the previous episode where we had a talking about. You might want to think about, if you're impressed by what you've seen, you might want to have a look at these because you can invest in one of these and not really lose any money, especially at the moment, because they seem to be going up in value. When I bought mine, I'm not going to quote numbers about what it cost, but when I bought it, it was the same price. It was 18 months old. It was the same price as brand new, but there was a wait. Well, I was going to say there's a wait list, but they'd stopped production, so you couldn't buy a brand new one. It had already just gone out of production. Literally, it went out of production 2 weeks after it was made, this car. It was one of the last off the production lines I mentioned previously. So you couldn't buy a new one anyway, but it was already selling for the same price as a new one. And then during COVID, it kind of ebbed slightly on its value. But they don't devalue like ordinary cars do. It's safe money. Your money is, safe as in the bank, quite frankly. As long as you look after it, you've got to maintain it to a high standard. And then during COVID, it went up again back to its new value. It's incredible. It's like this roller coaster, but it never does this like most cars do. It sort of bobbles, and now it's doing this. It's going up because, of course, they've been announcing all sorts of things, and this is what I wanted to talk about. So, some of you will know about this because I'm quite late to the punch. Not late telling you in terms of recording this, but unfortunately, by the time you actually see it. Actually broadcast this particular video, it'll be old news again. So I was talking about, in the previous episode, the CEO of Porsche making some very strange decisions. First of all, announcing they were dropping this platform, the Boxster, and they came in on the 718 chassis, or technically it's actually called the 982. It's the actual correct title, although you very rarely hear it called that. So it's the 982 platform. And they're going to drop it in favour of an EV vehicle. And everyone in the industry, me included, I made some comments saying this is suicide for Porsche. Nobody's going to buy an electric, white goods electronic product that devalues like a stone and is just the same as something from China. It won't be a Porsche. It just won't be. Porsche cannot change their DNA. It's like, a cat saying it's going to become a dog. You just can't. That's not the way it works. You just cannot change your DNA. And Porsche is an engineering company, not electronics, not washing machines or iPads. It's an engineering company, and that is exactly what people love about it, and why people like me and many, many out there, thousands of people in this country and millions around the world, desire their product. Enthusiasts especially desire these sports car products because they are everything a sports car really should be. They're not, I'm not saying they're perfect, but they are pretty much nailing what this sort of vehicle should do. And to the idea that someone like me, and I'm sure I represent probably 90% of the buying public for this type of vehicle, the idea that they are going to just switch to an EV is absurd. There's no chance of that at all. No chance. Anyway, talking about internal combustion engines versus EV, it's probably a discussion for another day, but at the end of the day, the biggest, as I've said before, the most sensible, I think I said this when I was in the car actually, I was talking about it then, I got behind some traffic, so we had a bit of a chat about the industry and EVs and things. And at the end of the day, EV is not a solution to the green, the topic of green transport in the future. The long-term solution is definitely hydrogen, no question, because it is the most sustainable thing on the planet, and it doesn't hurt the planet to use it at all. Yeah, it's a win-win, but the problem is it needs massive investment and cost to set up the processing and harvesting of it, and that's what hasn't been encouraged. We've been sold this complete lie, the EV lies, as it's called. I remember watching the Car Guys YouTube channel. I'm a big fan of them, Damien Butt, and he did a great video about this called The Great EV Lie, and he just about nailed it in this video. Fantastic. And he was talking about how they are not green to produce. Mining the rare elements for the batteries is dirty and dangerous and extremely polluting. And of course, they have a relatively short life. You're not going to get 15, 20 years out of an EV. You're not. Not without replacing the battery, and then you go through the whole cycle again. Disposing of the batteries is incredibly damaging to the environment. They are not nice, and they are fire risks. There is just no upside to it, and I'm afraid we have a generation that have been brainwashed into thinking that these are the dream solution, and they think that the electricity comes from the sky. No, it doesn't. It has to be generated by a power plant. So even the basics of how the electric gets into that car, the car itself, yes, it doesn't produce, when it's running, it doesn't produce any emissions. But the production to create that car and then dispose of it after it obsoletes itself very, very quickly. It's like an iPhone. You know, your iPhone won't last 20 years. Neither will one of these cars. You've got no chance. Not without having to upgrade the battery, possibly several times. And we know from the Porsche Taycan that can cost, in that case, 43 grand. The whole thing is ridiculous. And there is nothing green, nothing good for the planet. It's just literally... It's almost like blinkers on. It's moving the problem somewhere else. We'll let the Chinese deal with it. They can do the pollution. That doesn't help the planet. It doesn't matter where the pollution's created. It's still pollution. So you've got pollution from the power stations locally, generating the electricity, and massive pollution, industrial pollution, from the actual building of these things and creating the batteries, manufacturing the batteries in the first place. The whole thing is farcical. But anyway, probably talk about this again some other time. But so... Anyway, I've gone off the subject a little bit, gone slightly at a tangent now, but coming back to Porsche and its CEO, I won't bore you by telling his name now, because I'll come to the point in a second. It's becoming irrelevant. And he announced that they were going to drop this product, and this was, people were saying, this is, it was even in the Daily Mail and stuff like that, and people saying, well, that's going to do them a lot of good, because nobody wants an EV sports car. Yes, a handful will do, but it'll be like 5% of their existing customer base. Not a chance. And they will not recruit new customers because they're going to be really expensive. They're not going to be very reliable. They're going to be heavy. Exact opposite of what I've got. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be full of tech that you don't need. All sorts of stupid nonsense. You know, with lane assist and electric door handles and all sorts of things that are going to go wrong. Cameras instead of mirrors. I mean, for God's sake, the whole thing is just stupid, isn't it? Anyway, that was the feedback from me and from millions around the world, frankly, that especially those that are owners already. So don't do this, because I'll never buy one of those. Forget it. 11 days later, as I previously mentioned, they reined back on replacing the Macan with an all-EV version, saying, oh no, the customer demand isn't there. You're dead right, it was never there in the first place. Now, it's not all Porsche's fault, and Porsche is just one brand. You've got the same with Mercedes and VW, they're on the same boat, and Audi, same company. And this has been forced on them by politics, hasn't it, really, from the EU at the end of the day with this net zero. And don't get me started on that either. I think most of us are realising that this is a complete ridiculous mirage of an idea. Net zero is something that you just cannot get to. You know, the Industrial Revolution took like 100 years to actually come to full fruition. You can't go to net zero in like 10 or 15 years like they're trying to do. Just ridiculous. And it's the lack of any kind of compromise or common sense, saying we need to phase out fossil fuels, but you need to do it in a sensible time frame. You can't do that in 15 or 20 years. No chance. Ridiculous. So, the EU politicians and in Germany, they've jumped on this bandwagon. Oh, yes, we must, because they're all Greens, and it's been absolutely disastrous for German industry. They're losing jobs at Volkswagen right, left and centre. We've lost jobs in the UK. Lotus, Geely, the company that own Lotus, Chinese company, and this I think is very deeply annoying and cynical, by the way. Geely have made over 500 redundancies at Hethel, the Lotus factory in Norfolk. And this is the plant that makes the Emira sports car, a very fine car indeed, very much on a par with mine. I've got some reservations about the Emira's quality and one or two things about the interior, but apart from that, I think it's absolutely knockout. And I would seriously, if I was buying one of these today, I'd seriously have to consider them both, because it's a really fine car and it looks stunning. Really good looking car. It's probably the only car that can match or even possibly beat this on looks. And that's not going. They're going to stop production of it. And this company is manufacturing an electric vehicle, which is half of it is manufactured. The electronics and electrical parts all come from China, and they assemble it in Holland, and they're calling it a Lotus. Have you ever heard anything so ridiculous as that? So you can see the way the industry is going. It's like the Chinese companies are buying up. They bought Lotus to eliminate them, basically. They're using the badge to try and use it as a marketing tool, a bit like Ford did with the Capri, which is another one where that's been an absolute sales disaster. Electric Capri. Have you ever heard of a contradiction in terms? Electric Capri. Those two words don't go together at all. Capri was a full-blooded, sort of male-orientated, sporty coupe. I know it wasn't the fastest car in the world, but it had a marketing image that just doesn't fit. The name does not fit the car they put it on recently, and the sales of it have absolutely tanked. And they're now shutting down production. I don't know if they're dropping the model completely, but in Cologne, I think it is, they've shut, I think at least half of the production has been shut down. There have been job losses there. These are just stupid decisions that are being made by people who are being put into jobs. It's a bit like Jaguar, isn't it? Jaguar and their marketing campaign. Let's do an advert for Jaguar that doesn't feature any cars and seems to be aimed at like 1 to 3% of the whole community, Really weird. A really wokey rebranding of a superb, well-loved brand with fantastic heritage and provenance, just ruined in literally 1.5 minutes advert. Absolutely bizarre. What the hell were they thinking of? If I was JLR, I'd sack everybody involved in that, including the CEO of Jaguar, the marketing guy. He's quite well known. I've forgotten his name, and he knows better. I'd get rid of them all, because they have shown they are not fit, and they need to rethink and stop thinking that they can tell customers what to buy. You're going to buy this. This is like the ID cards thing. Don't get me into politics, straying a bit here. I'm reaching. But we just had to think about ID cards. It's like telling people what to do. You can't do that with retail products. People that buy a Jag are, what did Jeremy Clarkson famously say? If you've got a Jag, you're probably a cad. Not a cheater and deceiver in modelling terms, a cheater and deceiver in other ways. You know what I'm talking about. How did Jeremy Clarkson say it? He said, the sort of chap who says to his wife, "Oh, well, darling, we better pay the bill here at the restaurant, but I need to warm up the oil in the Jag. So you just sort the bill out and I'll go and get the Jag ready and meet you at the door." I thought that was brilliant. I thought that's, sums up the sort of naughty boy image of Jag owners. Well, that has been destroyed. There was even that advert, wasn't there? Was it Tom Hiddleston and Sir Ben Kingsley and Mark Strong, I think it was? They did this advert being, if you own a Jag, you're bad, or you don't have to be bad to own a Jag. And it had this sort of raffish, caddish image for Jag drivers. And frankly, it was a brilliantly successful marketing campaign, and they've lost all that by being utterly stupid, not understanding their customers, not understanding what their customers want, not listening to their customers, and still arguing after they put that advert out and trying to say that people were hateful and they were what was it, elitist, and it was hate speech and this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, you have got this so wrong. You have got everything about this wrong. If you want to go into politics, go into politics. Don't ruin a great company like Jaguar. So we've got Jaguar in massive trouble, on the rocks, Lotus on the rocks, two of the great brands that competed with Porsche. And Porsche, and this is, I'm coming to the point now, Porsche are going the same way right now. So as I speak to you, they've just decided to let go of the CEO who made these announcements, which wasn't planned. Yeah, this was not on the cards at all. They've decided to bin him back into Volkswagen as a demotion, not actually sack him outright, but I don't know the man, and it's not for me to say what his qualifications are, but these announcements he made in the last 2 weeks, only a couple of days ago, as I speak, I think 3 days ago, he suddenly reined back again, and he said, oh, no, there will be an option to have an internal, excuse me, no, excuse me, beg your pardon, I need a gulp of Porsche coffee. This guy, is it Bloom? He reined back then saying, oh no, you will be able to buy an internal combustion engine of the Boxster and the Cayman after all. But now they're still not letting go of this farcical dream, this fantasy, this myth that they can sell these as EVs. Because they sort of gave the impression that it would be the high-end versions like the GT4 RS and the Spider RS. They'll still be IC. They're still not getting the fundamentals of what I and the buying public, and I'm sure if any of you that are watching this have got a Boxster or Cayman, you'll be going, yeah, are they deaf? Are they blind? Are they stupid? You're not going to successfully market that as an electric car. Electric car replacing something like that are two completely opposite ends of the spectrum, and the customers, you just won't get the same loyalty, you won't get the love, the passion, and the enthusiasts that buy these cars. Most of them, like me, will not even consider that as an electric car, because it just doesn't make you feel the same, it doesn't sound the same, it doesn't have that aura or the prestige or the provenance or the history. All that will be gone, and you'll be driving an electric iPad on wheels, and you can get that from China much cheaper. And this is the point. They are moving away from their USP, what makes them unique. And they need to, this is fatal in marketing. Don't try, and it's like, oh, I'll tell you what we'll do, that thing that we're not very good at, let's do more of that and compete with a much more competitive and cheaper cost-based competitor in the market, and we'll see how that goes. Well, you're going to get wiped out is what's going to happen. It's absolutely crazy. So this guy's got the boot, and they've binned him off to VW. It's absolutely astonishing. So since I started recording these videos, and I think I've done face-to-face, I've done 3, haven't I? Here, and then there's been a couple of in-car ones. I've done about 5 in total. And since I started recording them, this whole story has kind of evolved. It's gone from we're scrapping this model to, oh no, we're not scrapping it completely. There will be an internal combustion available after all, which is not what they said in the first announcement. Because it was all in the papers, and everybody was saying, well, good luck with that. You're just committing woke suicide was a popular comment, you know. This is another wokey sort of political step towards net zero, and your customers will just be gone. And it'll be like Jaguar, you'll be down in the bin, quite frankly. Porsche should know better than this, of all people, you know. I think that there's a lot of it is politics, driven by politics, but there's also a lot of corporate stupidity and inexperienced people who, and this is a theme I've mentioned before, it's a bit like in the modelling world. I've moaned about model designers who don't build models. This is the same thing. This is people running car companies who don't have any passion for cars. They don't. You can tell they're not car guys. To use Damien Butt's sort of nickname, the car guys. They're not car guys running these businesses. And if they were, they wouldn't be making such stupid decisions, and they would get exactly what their customers are saying, and they're not doing that. Anyway, thought that'd be interesting just to tell you about that. So that's a bit of breaking news. By the time you watch this video, it'll be old news, but it just keeps on moving, this story. Oops, sorry, making the camera wobble. But they can't let go of this dream, and they need to just say, we need to have internal combustion engines, or at least hybrid. To go all EV is death for this product. Sports car, no chance, you know. I'm saying this. You're thinking, what product? I've not seen it today. Here it is, it's here. Here it is, it's still sitting here. It's very well, thank you very much. All is well. So, obviously, this won't be going anywhere. I've got absolutely no plans to change that. Anyway, moving on to other subjects. So, we're going to have a quick look at the car in a second, something I forgot to mention to you last time. A couple of interesting points, actually. I'm also going to talk about, I've shown you the fan that I use, part of my sort of Formula One style of ownership. Leading on from what I've just been talking about, though, it's like, are we to be considered to be dinosaurs, people like me? It's been said. But there was a very interesting recent video with Harry Metcalf, Harry's Garage, and Jeremy Clarkson. They sat down together at Jeremy's pub, the Farmer's Dog, and they had a good 45 minutes conversation. It was really good, actually. And they were talking about these very same issues, and they are very much of the same opinion as I am, you know. And Clarkson has bought the F-Type Jag, and he runs it as his daily driver, a white one. And it's not even a top-spec model, it's a fairly base model, fairly light, of course. And he says he loves it, you know, and it sounds great and it goes well. He said, why would I want an electric car with all the inconvenience and the cost implications, you know, just throwing money down the drain, really. And on top of watching this, I thought, it's one of those videos where you go, yeah, absolutely. It's quite amusing to watch. More dinosaurs, older than me, obviously, I think they are. And then there's this chap, and I can't remember his name now, the one that's had you'll know, many of you that follow this will know about him. The guy who owns the Porsche Taycan, he's really slated the ownership of it, and has moaned, he's the guy that moaned about the depreciation, has showed it. He went to We Buy Any Car with his Taycan after 3 years, and they offered him £26,000, and it was 150k to buy. Now, this is unheard of. Porsches don't depreciate. This is exactly what I said at the beginning. This is completely unique to this brand. This is the brand that is safe money in the bank. Not if you go for the electric versions. That does not apply if you go for electric versions of the brand, so be warned. You need to stick with internal combustion engines. And he has just been on, I've been watching a video, and I haven't got to the end of it, if I'm honest, but I've watched about half of it. And his 3 years are up, and he's now said to them, right, I want to get rid of it, you know. And they've sort of got, there's like a balloon payment he's got to pay, and it's something like 55 grand, I think it was. Don't shoot me if I've got that slightly wrong, but it was a lot of money. It was over 50 grand as a balloon payment to keep the car, and it's only worth about 42,000 or something, so he'd lose money straight away. We Buy Any Car will give you 26 for it, so the market value is lower than that, actually. So when I say it's only worth, it's worth less than that. Between 35 and 45,000 probably, because nobody wants them. And here's the very amusing thing. He rang up the Porsche finance people and said, well, you've got the option to keep it for another year. And he said, how much is that? And I think she quoted £2,600 a month, which I think was the same as he's paid already. So it was no cheaper, even though it's now worth jack. In real terms, it's worth less than a third of its original value. And they were still wanting to charge him the same amount of money per month to keep it. If it was me, I'd be saying, you need to pay me to keep this. It's an absolute nightmare. Slight exaggeration, yeah, but you know what I mean. They need to make that much more attractive. And apparently they were having no negotiation. No, we can just extend it. You pay the same. He said, but it's worth a third of what it was. Why would I want to pay that sort of money for something that's worth a third of what I signed up for in the first place? You know, it's got an EV that's got an electric battery that's probably nearly knackered. And the problem that people don't understand about electrics, I understand this more than most, not because I'm an expert in electrics, but because of my aircraft that you see around me. They're all powered by these LiPo batteries, and Li-ion batteries are mainly used. But sometimes they have a combination of them in these battery packs in the modern cars that are being used on EV. And you've got to be very careful how you charge them. They're like handling a hand grenade, not sure if the pin's in or out, you know. You've got to treat them with such care. You've got to charge them gently. If you fast charge them when they're flat, you can destroy them and you can have fires. You know, I've seen these go up in flames, these models of mine. And we know that the cars have been doing the same thing. There are so many pitfalls that people just do not understand. The technology isn't ready, it's not right, and it's just been thrust on the public, many of whom have been far too willing and too gullible. Don't want to sort of insult anybody, but a bit naive and gullible, and are being brainwashed into thinking that this is a proper, sensible alternative, irrespective of what their actual needs are. And for a lot of people, they can't charge them anyway. Absolutely crazy, the whole thing. But anyway, so, you know, you can see the way that the world has gone, can't you? So if I'm a dinosaur, then so be it. Anyway, before I finish, I want to show you the car, and then I want to talk, just one final comment, something I kind of missed on my other talk about the Porsche when I was talking about what probably sounded like very expensive servicing. What I didn't tell you though was about the non-authorised Porsche Specialists, the independents. I didn't really tell you much about the costs, so I'm going to come back to that. First though, I think I'm going to let's have enough talk. Let's have a look at the car, and I'm going to spin you around. Look, there's my electric planes. Look, you see, these are the ones that can burst into flames if you're not very, very careful. Now let me just get my zoom down a bit. There we go. So there you go, Ayrton Senna's plane, #1 Marlboro McLaren. And we have Jensen Button, the Jensen Button version. Anyway, enough of that. Let's have a look at the car. So, all I wanted to show you was something very interesting which I completely omitted to mention the other day. And that was the way the car is constructed. And I tell you, it's quite light. One of the reasons that, it's got a big engine and gearbox, big 3.4 litre engine and this huge DSG gearbox, which is so almost a race car gearbox. It was actually developed for the PDK was developed for the Porsche 956 and 962 World Sports Car in World Endurance Championship race cars in the 1980s, and they've been refined and then put into road cars. So how have they, you might ask, how have they then managed to, get this right way around. How have they managed to get the weight down in this way? One of the ways is by having some aluminium panels. Now, for strength and to meet the safety crash test requirements, they have to be very careful. So I have my little magnet here. Now remember, by the way, before you get worried, I've got PPF on this car, so I'm not touching it onto the paint. It's got protection. And if I put this on here, as you can see, it's a steel roof. So we have a steel roof, steel. So what we have, if you think about it, if I move forward a bit more, let's check the front, let's have a look at these wings. Steel. So it's all steel for safety, but to save weight, we have an aluminium bonnet. Nothing. Aluminium. Okay. Spin you around so you see this a bit better. So you can see, look, there's no magnetism here. It's just nothing. Here, on the other hand, whoop. So aluminium, a great big section huge section there is aluminium, the bonnet. Obviously we've got plastic bumpers at the front, then we've got steel, and then we've got the doors. Now let's see about the doors. What do you think they're going to be? Nothing. Aluminium. Aluminium doors, no magnetism. So if you can imagine looking down on the car as you are now, whoops. I'm just going to try and get my gimbal to, a little bit of gimbal trouble here. Right, here we go. So we're looking down on the car. So it's like an X shape. So the central roof and the wings, the centre and the corners are all steel. See here, there you go. There's the proof. So if I do that on here, obviously, so you know I'm not kidding. It's just gonna drop off. Yep. I don't want to lose it under the car, otherwise. There you go. So that's aluminium. The bonnet's aluminium. What about the back? Let's have a look at this. Aluminium. So that's how they're saving the weight, you see. So there's like a cross, if you like, and an X. Think of it like that. So they're saving the weight by having the big areas, the doors, the boot, and the bonnet, all in aluminium and not steel. And that's probably saving. Oh, it's got to be saving about 130 kilos, 100 kilos, something like that. Perhaps less than that, perhaps 90 kilos. But you know, you can tell when you open the doors, they don't feel heavy. And the bonnet certainly isn't heavy. It's as light as a feather when you open that. And even the back, which is quite meaty in its design, with the glass in and everything. So they're trying to dial out all the weight wherever they can. So I thought that would be interesting for you to see. I'm just going to pop my little magnet on there, spin you around. One other thing I forgot to mention, which is of interest, I notice I've got some scuffs there which I need to wipe off. These door pockets here, I don't know if you can see these. That's probably because I'm not going the right way with my gimbal. I've got these door pockets. You've got lots of space. Got my Steve McQueen glasses in there, look. I think you may have seen these before. Steve McQueen Persol glasses. Very nice. But you've got plenty of door pocket space. Yes, here we go. It starts talking to me. And it's got the all the instruments coming on and everything. It's a beautiful thing, you know. And everything on this, they've just nailed it. They've got the ergonomics right. They've got the instruments right. The cockpit is just perfect. You feel so planted when you're behind the wheel in terms of the position of the pedals and the wheel is adjustable. So you've got a lot of a very race car like position, if you will, and it's just a very, very nice place to be honest. You've got over here, you've got all your switches for your mirrors and the windows. You've got a cruise control down here, and your wipers and all the rest of it. And I did have the keys out, which I've now neglected to do. Where have I put the keys? You see what I mean when I open the doors? When I said in the first video, open the doors and it starts talking immediately. Oh, let's have a look at this. You see what I mean about this E-type look it has? The haunches. Very E-type like, isn't it? It's one of the things that attracted me to it in the first place. So if we just have a look here, go in, have a look at the instruments. I'll just cycle you through the instruments that you can actually see. So you get this choice, and I can add into this menu that you're looking at, the scrolling menu, I can also add the option to have the sat-nav. You can have the sat-nav actually on that screen on the right as well. I think it's a bit distracting because you don't need the sat-nav in that screen and then the main screen. I think they're trying to make it a bit of a head-up display in some respects, but it didn't really do it for me at all, really, you know. Anyway, I'm just going to retrieve back to my tracking. There we go. Just going to retrieve my magnet. Make sure I don't go anywhere near my Swiss watch with that. It's not one of the De Gauss ones. That's a bit risky. Right, bring you back here then. So, final thing I was going to talk about today, which I haven't really covered, was we talked about servicing costs and how rather scary they can be. However, I think that, whoops, just going to get you back in the frame. There we go. So, the one thing I didn't really explain was the differences. So, to cut a long story short and keep this brief, so I don't have to re-track over old ground. If you have a minor service, there are sometimes extras on top, like brake fluid and your drive belt, but that's only every 6 years. So the drive belt's another 400 quid on top. Okay, but that's, again, I've had this problem where 6 years or 60,000 miles, and after 6 years I'd done 14,000. Bit of a problem. But going back to what the alternative is to Porsche pricing, which is quite high, especially when you get to cars that are 10 years old, which these are coming up to now. So the minor service, let's say it's 600 quid to include your brake fluid. £600 for a minor service, 1,200 for a major service. Okay, but there's every other year there is no service at all. So don't be frightened by these numbers. I've averaged about 500 to 525 per year average. So if you put £525 away every year, you'll be covered. Okay. However, if you go outside the dealer network and you go to one of the independents, like, I mean, for me, just a couple that are local to me, we've got Visac UK, who are in Middlewich, just off the M6 in the northwest. Or a bit further north, Warrington, we've got Ninemeister. And there's tons of other very good independents. So I don't think I'm saying you should go to these guys. There's loads of people around the country. But, and this is the killer point really. So what did I say? Let's call it 600 for a small service, and so think of it like this. Year 1, no service. Year 2, 600. Year 3, no service. Year 4, 1,200. However, if you go to these independents, they are charging. I'm looking at the actual quote they gave me. They said, hang on a minute, I just need to double check. I've got one of my sprues in the way and I can't quite read it. So it's £325 for a minor service, it's half. And a major service is £595. half price, 600 quid instead of 1200. And it says on the major service, however, that's actually better value than it sounds, because he quoted me 595. This is a year ago. 595, but if you don't have the belt, it's only 525. So it's less than half what Porsche are charging. It's about 45%, isn't it? Thereabouts. I find that very interesting. But you don't get the Porsche stamp in the book. This is the thing. So it's like any independent, you know. Of course, you're going to save money. We have stopped using Skoda and Honda for our other two cars, simply because they are now both, one's 10 years old and one's 12 years old. That's a car I'm going to do a little talk about and take you out for a spin in it on a different day. Won't be like this, obviously a different kettle of fish, but you'll find it quite interesting, I think. And we've gone outside the dealer network with those for good reason, really, because we were paying, we were paying very high prices. And when I say high price, we're talking about the hourly rate of labour, really. That's what's different. Part prices are about the same whether you go to the main dealer or you go to an independent, because they're all coming from, independent, third-party merchants, if you like, who are getting them from the factory in most cases, from the Skoda factory or the Honda factory or whatever. Or they may be using there might be an aftermarket element as well, So we noticed that Porsche are, you might want to sit down for this, Porsche are charging about £300 to £325 an hour for labour. And I think Skoda were charging about, I think it was about £185 to £200 an hour. Still an awful lot, quite frankly. That was our experience. And the thing that put us off Skoda, I won't go into too many details, but we had a terrible experience with their local dealer, which is a company that bought out a very good, excellent dealership with a long history, family-run business, who were brilliant. I won't say a word against them. And then they were bought out by this Jack the Lad company from the Midlands, replaced every single employee, all the employees had gone, and the employees that had been there before, some of them had been there for decades, and they were brilliant, knew the brand backwards, knew the product backwards, replaced them with kids who had to all go on courses, didn't know what they were talking about, knew less about the cars than I did, literally. And then when you ring up, and this was the final straw for me, when you rang up to have your car serviced, I had the girl on reception saying, "What do you want us to do?" This is on the Yeti. "What do you want us to do at this service?" And I said, "Well, it's due for the 10-year service, Yeah, but what do you want us to do? What are the actual procedures you want us to carry out? And I said, well, whatever's on the schedule for 10 years. Well, that's for you to tell me. I said, don't be ridiculous. This isn't for me to tell you. You're the main Skoda dealer. Don't you know what is on the schedule of your own products that you are selling, or were selling, because it's obviously obsolete now, the Yeti, but... And it was so annoying. And then finally, when we went to collect the car, we had the same conversation actually when we dropped it off, and I said, no, go on the schedule and do everything that's on the schedule at 10 years. And when we went to collect it, they said, oh, we haven't been able to, we had a problem with our nipples, with our brake bleed nipples on the front brake drum, on the actual back of the calipers, I should say, for the discs. And they're rusted. And when I investigated this, and they rang me up and said, oh, well, I'm having problems with it. And I looked back and I said, yes, but you've serviced this car for the last 4 years. And 2 years ago, you should have bled the brakes then, and you didn't do so for reasons not clear, and it's clearly in the schedule. You have neglected to do one of the items on the schedule. So no wonder she's asking me what's on the schedule, because I don't think they know. And they hadn't bled the brakes. They hadn't changed the fluid for 4 years. And it's definitely 2 years maximum. And because of this, they'd seized, and they couldn't get them out. They couldn't undo them. And I said to them, I said, well, if this is a problem, oh, well, we need to replace the calipers. I don't think you do. I said, you need to get those nipples undone and get them out. Oh, well, we'll just replace the calipers and it's going to be 500 quid. And I was like, no, I said, I tell you what, okay, yeah, do it free of charge, because the only reason they've seized is because you haven't taken them out. And it's your duty to do so. In good faith, I've had a car serviced 2 years ago, thinking you've done everything as is on the schedule, and you haven't done. And you haven't told me that you haven't done it. Is it any wonder why we start to lose our rag with these dealerships? And you can have this with Porsche and all sorts. Less so, in fairness, obviously, with a brand like that. But this, I think this was just. And then the dealer principal, I said, "Where's the dealer principal? I want to speak to him immediately." No, you can speak to the service manager. And I went into this jumped up little, arrogant and aggressive little guy, had a crew cut there, and he said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Well, you girls just told me you haven't done this, and you don't know how to do it, and the only way you can fix it is by replacing the calipers at my expense." I said, "But it's you who needs to pay for this, because you have neglectfully not told me at the last time you serviced it." In fact, there were actually 2 services when it should have been done. So it's entirely down to neglect by the dealership. They've obviously probably forgotten. They've tried to take them off and thought it was a bit too hard and forgot to say anything. And my wife's been running around with 4-year-old, 5-year-old brake fluid. Absolutely ridiculous, dangerous. Complete, because brake fluid is hygroscopic and it takes in water, affects the performance of the high braking. And this is just, this is so bad you can almost get them into a lot of trouble, I think, with trading standards or the ombudsman, really, if I wanted to. Anyway, a big row ensued at this Skoda dealer. My wife was stood next to me. I lost it. I went into full-on Peter Rant mode. And I said, "You have been completely negligent. You haven't done your job. There is no escape. The last 3 services were carried out by you. You are the official Skoda dealer. You have a duty of care to do your job properly. And if there's a problem, you have to tell the customer at the time. You don't just not do it and don't say anything. And now we've got 5-year-old brake fluid." I said, "And this is the reason that we've got the rusted on these brake nipples. Obviously, you put the fluid on to pressurise and remove the old fluid and put the new fluid in to bleed them. And it's impossible. And now they want to charge me £500 to replace the brake calipers because of their failure. And then you wonder why I get into rants with people." And I did lose my temper. Now, I didn't swear and I wasn't abusive. It's not my way. But I will raise my voice if somebody is talking to me like I am 3 when they have in fact not understood what their job is, haven't discharged their duty, and yet charged the customer as if they had done. We didn't get a discount for not having the brake fluid changed. We paid the full price. And we were completely oblivious because we hadn't been informed. They'd failed to inform the customer that they hadn't done the job properly. And now they were saying that we had to pay for that. I went absolutely ape. I really lost it. And I said, "I want to see that." And this guy and me had a massive row. And I really lost my rag and started pointing at him. "You have been negligent." I said, "I'm not saying you personally, but your company has let the customer down." I said, "And what you've done could get you in legal trouble." I said, "And it's your duty to put it right." And he went absolutely crazy. He said, "Get out of my office. Get out of my..." And then they told me there was no dealer principal. They literally said, "We don't have a dealer principal here." Well, lo and behold, after 5 minutes, he hears me screaming and shouting at this guy. And he comes running down the stairs. They did have a dealer principal, so they were lying as well. They just lie about everything. And he said, "You've got to stop talking to my staff like this." I said, "Like what?" He said, "Shouting at this young girl. She's somebody's daughter." I said, "So is my wife." I said, "And she could die because of your negligence." I said, "This is entirely a problem of your creation." I said, "I'm asking you." I said, you've been completely incompetent. You've been negligent. I said, "And it's down to your responsibility to put this right." Well, the only way to put it right is I said, "Well, tell you what, you need to fix this." "Well, we'll have another go. We might have another try at trying to get them off." And of course, I just he said, if you don't lower the tone of your voice, I'm going to have you removed from the dealership." I said, "No, don't bother. It's okay. You'll never see me again." I said, "But don't expect me not to mention this. And by the way, this was Barlow Motors in Crewe." There you go. I've said it. Disgusting. Their customer service, their attitude, and their competence are nil. I was furious, as you can tell. And we went to a local garage, and he blowtorched off. He managed to do it, no problem. Traditional garage, they did a specific job for us. They blow-torched off the old, the bleed nipples, put new ones in, bled the brakes, sorted. And it cost me 100 quid. It's unbelievable what these dealers try to get away with, really. It is, you know. But I'm not trying to bring Porsche into that, but I will just say that it is typical of modern dealerships. They have youngsters working for them as mechanics who are really just trained to replace stuff, undo stuff and put new stuff on. They're not trained to fix things. Example, back on Porsche. There was a Porsche Boxster 981, so just like mine, a red one, beautiful car. And it was in Neinmeister when I went in there, and I said, "What's wrong with this?" And he said, "Oh, I better not tell you." And I said, "No, you better tell me now, go on." And he said, "He's been his gearbox has failed, the DSG gearbox." And I was like, "What?" my heart rate and blood pressure started to climb very rapidly when he said this. And he said, "You know what? It's he said they can lock, the actual shafts can lock." He said, "But it's so rare." He said, "I've heard of it once before." He said, and he went to Porsche and they just said, and this is summing up the story. Porsche said, "New gearbox." And it's 16 grand, I think it was, you know. He said, "I know how we can fix that." He said, "If I can replace the sensor and the solenoid that operates it, I can disassemble it, unlock it, put these new parts in, and for about 12 or 1500 quid, it'll be fixed." And he said, "We fix things." He said, "If we can't fix it, we won't bodge anything. We won't bodge anything." He said, if it's broken or it's dangerous or it's worn, we replace it." He said, "But if it's just something that we know about and we can actually replace smaller parts and not just scrap, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater and scrap everything," which is what they do. Now that tells you a little bit about the culture in the industry, doesn't it, really? Remarkable story. And he said, "Don't worry," he said, "that customer will be happy." He said, "It'll be way under 2 grand and he'll get it all fixed like new." He said, "But at Porsche would just say, no, you need a new gearbox. You know, we have to order a complete new gearbox." And the labour on it was, because obviously the engine has to come out, then they've got to take the old gearbox off and blah, blah, blah. Catastrophic, you know. And I was quite impressed, not only by that story, but also in their workshop, they've got like a separate room where they had a very sort of geeky, almost an Adrian Newey sort of guy character. And he was working on this Porsche Cayman GT4, a brand new one, engine and gearbox. And I thought, "What is it new? Well, what's wrong with it then?" "Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. We're upping the power from 400 to 600. I was saying, "Really?" Because what did I say the other day? I said, "This has got as much power as you would ever need to drive legally and sensibly, even, you know, even in a spirited way. It's got more than you'd ever need, this car. I don't think you'd ever need a Taycan or Ferrari. You just don't, honestly. Trust me. This will tick all the boxes that you need if you're a keen driver, you know. A proper motorsport experience without it being silly." And I was like, 600 horsepower, oh my God, you know, in this light car. He said, "Yeah. He said, we've got to beef up the gearbox as well. We've got to change some of the gear dog rings, I think it was." He says, that's why the gearbox is over there. And it was just all brand new. You could tell it was new. It was all like shiny, you know. So they know what they're doing, these guys. I'm generalising, obviously, but this is Neinmeister at Warrington. I thought, I was quite impressed by the knowledge inside that building. I wasn't too impressed about the building itself on the outside. It could do with a bit of work, but I suppose it's a bit shabby looking, so nobody breaks in there. If it looked too posh, it would be a bit of a target, I think. But these guys know what they're doing. And I actually asked them, I said, "Are all your people ex-Porsche?" And he said, "No, they're not actually." He said, "But we've got 2 guys. One's worked for Porsche Carrera Cup team. One's worked for BMW in the British Touring Car Championship." So they were all really knowledgeable guys, you know. He said, "They are not..." He said, "The trouble is, if I recruit people..." Because I was a bit not sure about this. And he said, "If I recruit people from Porsche, all they know how to do is to replace things. They don't know how to fix anything. And they're not going to have that can-do attitude, you know." But it's interesting, isn't it? Anyway, I hope you thought that was interesting. I think I've covered just about everything. One final thing I was going to mention. I may do another separate talk about this in the future. And there's something I touched on with my first talk about the Porsche. Washing cars. And obviously, this is very unusual, this one, because it's all PPF'd all over the car. So I can tackle it in a completely different, very unusual way. and just go hammer and tongue at it, you know, with the old cleaning cloths and the detailer fluid. If you did that on your car without PPF, you will scratch it back to the Stone Age. Don't do this at home, folks. Whatever you do, don't do that. So I occasionally wash it with the snow foam and stuff. But I'll talk about how I wash other cars, because that's more pertinent. And what I might do is perhaps get some photos and a montage going together, because I do it in a very different way. So I'll talk about the Honda in particular, because that's just had a full sort of stage 1 stroke stage 2 detail polish back in May. And what I normally do with that car is I just, well, with all our cars, I just snow foam it. This is not the Porsche, so forget the Porsche for a second. With an ordinary car that's not got PPF on it. So what I do is I snow foam it, and then I just blast it off. The end. Pretty much. Slight exaggeration. What I won't do is I won't wipe it down. Now, there's nothing wrong with washing your car in a traditional way. A lot of people will snow foam it first and then blast it off, and then they'll traditional hand wash it. And I sometimes do that, perhaps once a year. But generally, because we've got the Yeti has got the G-Technic EXO, the silicate, microscopic silicate protection coating, low slip, very easy to remove dirt from it just by washing it off with the hose, frankly. Now this will never get off 100%, but it will get off 90, and 90% will be enough to actually remove what you can see. So this is quite interesting, because it means that you don't have to go at it with such a long and involved washing process. Now, with the Honda, I mentioned I polished it back in May, and I'll go into that separately in a second. But because it is polished, the dirt just drops off it, you know, because it's been properly polished up. Now that car's got quite a lot of faint to, well, let's say medium scratches. Not so bad that they catch your eye, but I can see them. And you can go at it with aggressive polishing. I haven't got the most aggressive polisher, and I decided not to go the whole 9 yards. So I did what they call a paint correction on it, because it was going, the car is black, of course, and it was going incredibly dull, discoloured, and this kind of a horrible, cloudy appearance. It didn't look nice, it didn't look glossy, it looked absolutely foul. So I spent 4 days polishing it, and I went over it bit by bit, and you know, I did the full Monty. I used masking tape and I went around it, and this was in quite warm weather. I had to bring it in here, it was so hot I had to bring it inside in the end, so we didn't have any problems, you know, with the actual the heat marring. And it was really hard work. It was probably the wrong time of the year to do it, actually, but the results were absolutely stunning. Before and after photographs, it's incredible. You've got this cloudy, dull, horrible mess, and then it's this jet black. It's got speckles in it. It's got like a metallic speckle in it, which I've never even seen before, to be quite honest, until you polish it up. And it's made a hell of a difference. So what we do now, as I say, is we just snow foam it, and then I blast it off, and then I go around wiping only the glass, the mirrors, not the paintwork. Otherwise, you're just going to create more swirls again, because you haven't got 100% of it off. Now, you could do that if you got 100% off. Still not a great idea, I don't think. You don't want to be drying physically. What I do is I pat dry, pat, and I'll sometimes even have jugs of, I was going to say distilled water, it's not, it's filtered water jugs. And I'll go over to get rid of any, because it's black, because it leaves watermarks. And I'll pat. This will get rid of all the marks, and it'll leave you with a mint-looking showroom car. It does take a bit more time, though. It probably takes me about 90 minutes to do this, maybe up to 2 hours. But when you've finished, it looks absolutely stunning. It looks like it's had a respray or it's a brand new motor, you know. So I might do a separate video about this in the future. You know, I don't do it for a living or anything, so there are plenty of people out there that I follow on YouTube who do that. One of my favourites, by the way, is White Details. I forgot his name. His name's White, obviously, but is it Jim White? Yeah, and he's brilliant. I like him. I think he's got such an eye for detail, and he really does put the hours in, you know. Sometimes I think he almost does too much work. I don't know what he charges. Well, I've got an idea what he charges, actually, because I did contact him once. But I don't think it's over the top what he charges. He does such an excellent job, you know. But I do it in a way that is a no-touch system. And no touch is what you want. Now on this, the Porsche, I can touch it all I want because it's protected. But by having this no-touch system, we've now got the Honda looking like a brand new motor. It's 10 years old, and it looks better now than it ever looked in our ownership. Looks brand new. Beautiful. Still one or two scratches. If the sun's out, I can just make out. I reduced them quite a bit so your eye doesn't see them, but I know where they are. But it doesn't matter, does it? Nobody else, they all say, what a beautiful motor. Is it really 10 years old? You know, and that's the comment. And with the Yeti, which is 12, people say the same thing. And that's got, now that has had a little bit of work done. We had a little bit of corrosion, actually, and it got done under warranty. And it was quite impressive that the new paint, I didn't really appreciate the processes that were done because I think there was a little bit of carelessness here and there. But the actual quality of the paint and the top coat that was put on it was better than the factory. And it's got this beautiful gloss about it everywhere apart from on the bonnet. The bonnet's fine, but it's not quite as high gloss as the rest of the car is. Bonnet and the roof. But the sides and the back are all got this super high gloss in it. Beautiful car. Looks brand new. 12 years old. 85,000 miles on the clock, you know. Fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to talk about that car another day. I think that's enough for today. You've got a flavour. I think you heard me having a rant about Skoda. Sorry, but they think that customers are stupid. They think that everyone is dumb and they don't know anything about cars. And then you realise, I was looking at them, I was looking at the sales manager and the customer service manager and the receptionist, and I thought, you haven't got any knowledge about these cars, any of you. I can tell. And the predecessors were the exact opposite. They're really new and back to front. And the same was true with Honda. And the ironic thing, there's a crossover in the story because this row that took place was at what used to be the Stuart Graham Honda showroom. The row took place in June 24, by the way. And it used to be Stuart Graham Honda. And it was the same story with them. They were lovely people to deal with. Stuart Graham, of course, was a famous motorbike racer. And he raced that motorbike, the model I've got, the Mike Hailwood winner of the Alaman TT. He rode number 7, the other bike. I think he came second. Or second or third. And he's a lovely chap. I met him, you know. I'm not sure if he's still with us, but he's now long retired. And he sold the business. And they sold it to Holdcroft. And then they shut it. They only kept it going for about 18 months, 2 years, and then they closed it. And they moved out of that site. So then Skoda came in with this bunch of idiots, frankly. I don't wish to be rude about people, but the customer experience I had with both of them, once the family businesses were gone, was just awful. And they just don't care less. They just treat you like a number, and they think you're stupid. Well, hello. You've just got to push back, you know. And I tell you now, anybody watching this that's in the same part of the world as me, I wouldn't go anywhere near Barlow's in Crewe. I have zero confidence in them. They also tried to wriggle out of the warranty claim, which was an open and shut case. And when I took it to their own body shop, who does Audi and VW as well, and they just said, oh yeah, that's a warranty claim. It's nothing to do with the customer, or it's clearly open and shut. It's still within warranty of the 10 years. Was it 12 years? And they said, no, they've got to sort it. They'll have to just agree to it. And they sent that message back, and they very reluctantly agreed to it. But these rather unpleasant people were trying to wriggle out of that. They just want your money, and they don't want to do anything for it. They don't want to fix anything. They just want the easiest, cheapest way to take as much money from the customer as possible. Now, Porsche are a bit like that. I think the biggest beef I've got with Porsche is more to do with some of the people they've got are not what they were. And this is Chester I'm talking about. Although they have had some major changes, so I'm hoping that might improve things. But whether I go back there, I think it's looking a bit unlikely. So I may go to another branch, you know, another authorised dealer, maybe Wolverhampton even. Or possibly one in Manchester, or in Bolton. But the biggest problem with Porsche is the way they manipulate the market. Won't let you have, you know, you want a GT3 RS or a GT4 even, you've got to beg and plead. And, well, if you buy this Macan and if you buy this Cayenne, we'll put you on the list. And it's like, no. This is one of the areas where Porsche's got into trouble. So going back to summarise the end of the video, back to the beginning really, where we're saying about Porsche being in real trouble. And this is one of the things that's upset people over the years and where they've got things wrong. And this is them allowing their dealers in the UK, I don't know whether it's unique, I don't know, but they're allowing them to manipulate the market, take advantage of customers, It's far easier. There's a few YouTube vids on this. Some of you will have seen it. Mark, can't remember his name now, but there's this guy that does a lot of dramatic stuff, and to get a GT3 RS, he had to go via all these different routes and having to buy a Taycan, he had to buy a Cayenne, and in the end it was cheaper. He worked out it was just much cheaper to pay $100,000 uplift and buy from a specialist that had the car flipped, and buy from someone that's an independent for a new car, delivery miles. And it was cheaper to pay $100,000 over the odds than it was to try and go through the Porsche way, because he'd lose so much money on these Taycans with depreciation again. Depreciation and Porsche, these two words have never gone hand in hand until Taycan. Crazy. The silly vehicles, I drove it, I know exactly what I'm talking about now, having driven one for a day. Nobody expects you to arrive at a roundabout like the Imperial fleet coming out of Lightspeed, and that's what happens. You end up driving, the car has no sensation, it's very hard to keep to the speed limit and keep safe, because you don't have those feeling of the engine and the sound of the engine to remind you the pace that you're driving at. There's no sort of warnings at all. And that's one of the things I think that it's too much performance for the road. I think they're completely dangerous, even in the hands of an expert driver like myself. Too much for the road, way too much. I mean, they use it as the Cayman GT Championship. They actually use it as the pace car, which tells you everything you need to know. And the Cayman GTs, which are very hot versions in that championship, they struggle to keep up with it on the warm-up laps. It has no problem heading them around the field at all, Absolutely crazy. Of course, when it gets back in the pits, probably spends the next hour on charge. Well, it would, wouldn't it? Anyway, I had to get that in. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that little talk. It ended up in a bit of a rant about Skodas, which was a bit off topic, but something we needed to talk about. And I'm going to talk about the Skoda separately. Probably talk about the Honda as well in the future, not just about the Porsche. This has never been an exercise in sort of boasting or anything like that. Just wanted to share with you what it's all about, really. And I think it's going to be interesting to talk about those other two cars, because it gives this bit of context as well. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay well, stay safe. Thanks for all your time, and I'll see you soon. Until then, thanks a lot, and bye for now.